Our next speaker is Petersen from the Economic and Management Sciences faculty. Petersen is currently an Information Systems lecturer at the University of the Western Cape and is also working on completing a doctoral research. Good luck with that. She believes in the practical application of theoretical knowledge, and that is what we spoke about just before the presentation, to improve workplace integration and performance, and that is what our graduates need to do. And she's got a particular research interest in ICT for development in health and education, entrepreneurship, and developing innovative teaching pedagogies to improve student learning experiences. Oh wow, that's a mouthful. But very, very relevant in the day and time that we are in. So thank you, Petersen. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So the reason why I've decided to present is because I have student numbers in excess of 250, and a large number of them are full-time students. And what I teach is Information Systems Strategy Formulation, which is a 30-credit module. Yes, I know. And that requires 300 notional hours of work. So for me, it was almost 300 students. Getting them to work for 300 hours takes some creative thinking. Also, if I want them to do it properly, and with graduate unemployment levels increasing, unfortunately, there's a need for us to instill graduate attributes as well as practical skills and thinking into our students. So I've set this up as a practical application, but for those of you who like the theory behind it, there are research objectives, which I've done after the fact. Because teaching strategy to students whose parents are ultimately not the GMs or MDs of companies is very difficult, because how do you understand strategy when sometimes your parents are unemployed? Because then there's a very difficult link between what I'm trying to teach and what they have access to. So it's how do I make it real for such large classes? So part of what I did was, it's based on experiential learning and getting them involved in what it is that I'm trying to teach. So that's, frankly, some people say it's Confucius. But it's about the involvement into students when I'm trying to teach particular concepts, which are fundamentally difficult to understand from a theoretical level. So this is based on COLB. So it's about what happened, what did I experience, and then reflecting on the learning in terms of how do I improve and how do I apply it. So I've used a different number of eConva tools, and so I've used, I also have my students. So I'll get them to introduce themselves when I talk honestly about how it went, because obviously my view is going to be biased. What I did was the reinforcement of learning. So one, I would set up, firstly, the course outline. Two, the understanding that because it's a 30-credit course, and I realized that students were taking my course not because they wanted to do this in future, but because they thought two courses, doing one course was better than doing two 15-credit courses. So that was an unusual realization for me, because I thought most students would be doing it because this is what they saw themselves doing in future. But actually that wasn't the case. So it was a reiteration of, sure, it's 30 credits, but I expect as much work as you would be doing for the two other courses, which doesn't leave me that popular. But I also say that I tell them what they need, not what they want. So I say this up front, which has made my life this much easier. Because the statement up front means I'm going to give you the things that you require in the workplace in terms of critical thinking and practical application. I'm not here to spoon feed you. This is the idea. My job is to prepare you for the workforce. And so I'm essentially going to act like a boss, like a manager, because I've had students I come from industry. So I've had students come from UWC who joined my team. And so I know from a practical experience what is lacking. And so as part of my teaching, which is not very popular, because I'll say, but you're making the stuff. And why are you setting me up for failure? Giving a bitch about it. And the feedback is quite brutal. But I can honestly say, because I come from where I come, I understand what it is, what you need, before you get there. So before you go to the job that asks you for the experience and the application of the concepts that you've learned, I'm going to teach it to you now. You may not like it, and you may not like me, and the course feedback is probably going to suck. But it's important for you to learn the skills. So I take the criticisms a lot of the time. Okay. So what I do is, the theory goes up first. Often there are video lectures accompanying them. So for those who don't like coming to class. But they also get tutorial sessions where they need to prepare up front, bring their answers to class. I randomly call up people from the group, and they don't like that either, to put the answers on the board. And then I give them the critique of the answer instead of giving them the answer. Because I say, giving you the answer only proves one thing. I know the answer. And I know the answer. But the difference between you putting up your answer is whether you've thought through this enough to be able to formulate and problem solve to come up with the answer. I'm not judging it on whether it's correct or not. That's only part of the criteria. But if you're brave enough, you should be able to get critical feedback on how to improve. And I go also, what they find difficult is that there's not only one correct answer. Because I go, if this was true, everybody would be running the same strategy. So that is also a difficult thing for them to understand. Can you please give us the answer? And I go, but there's not only one correct one. That's why I mark using a rubric instead of just a yes, this is right or this is not right. I test one, whether they know the theory, and two, whether they can apply it. And the marks are generally split as half and half. So I use a chat room where they can, I don't know if you can see that, but what I do is, you'll see that my name is not listed there, my tutor's names are listed there, but I generally go and read the chat rooms to see whether there are common areas identified that I need to address. And interestingly enough, I found out that a lot of them don't read instructions. Now that's literally because I tell them which tools to use and they ask it in the group. So I go and say, I've seen there are certain comments, and I send them out an announcement for, these are the key areas I've picked up, please address it as follows, go and read the instructions. No, because that's problem solving. Otherwise, if I tell them which tool to use, they're not going to learn that they actually need to go read the instructions, right? I also structure learning material as follows. And so what I've done is, in order for them to learn it, I've gotten them to play a business simulation game. Because I cannot send them out into the real world and try to get them to do strategies for somebody else without the risk to them, UWC's reputation and possibly the company. So how do I get them to apply this in a student-centered way with minimal risk to them and the institution, or and myself, depending on how it goes. So what I did was, and also the tool needed to be free. Let's start there, because obviously one, we don't need money, and we don't have money. So I had to find a free tool that could accommodate 300 students that would give me feedback that they could all play, possibly using Wi-Fi access on campus, because a lot of them don't have it at all. And so what I did was I found an MIT tool, and MIT generally, I also use MIT's course material, because I got my students deserve the best, and I believe that they can understand this level of material. So I set the bar high. Some of them don't like the bar that high, but you motivate them to get there. So what would happen is that because MIT has such few students, you can only register maybe 50 students onto a game, and I've emailed them about it, but I literally would have to enter and create students one at a time, approximately 260 students. So I'd have to create a username and a password. So this takes a large amount of time. But I do it anyway because my students deserve the best teaching experience. So what I can also find is I can see who's played, I can see which market share they've done, and I can view exactly how they've played it. So during class time, we have a discussion generally on a Monday morning. I ask them how the game playing is going. I open up the results table, I find someone who's done particularly well, and I found somebody who hasn't done as well, who I've asked them to volunteer for the people who haven't done that well. And I asked them what they've learned, in order for us to have a discussion about what the strategy is compared to the people who had done well versus the ones who didn't make as much profit. So these are the graphs they get. And then for those of you who are interested in the background and what I've used, they also have to do reflection on learning. And the reflection is important because it's about what have they done, and also what do they need to do differently. And my interest is not only about what they've done, but about the improvement and continuous learning, about how they improve as individuals and as future employees or employers. And being able to run a business like this with no risk, it essentially challenges them for becoming entrepreneurs, because they're running a Sony, for instance, who makes PS3s, and I've used a video game manufacturer because I figured a lot of them would be interested in that. I asked what form of lecturing they preferred, and you'll see 46% of them said playing the business simulation game. I also asked them whether they'd used it before, and very few of them had. I asked them which of the departmental resources improved their overall learning experience. So for CICT, 92.3% of them said Canva, but that's probably because they have no other option. So don't read too optimistically into that. Just to put it out there, let's keep it real, right? But your feedback is coming next, and I know you're not going to sugarcoat it, so I'm starting now already to set this up, right? But the interesting part was also when I asked them what led to the greatest amount of learning, 31% of them said class lectures. And I think it's the reiteration and the different style where they get challenged and motivated and get told, I actually will not accept mediocrity because I believe that you're better than that, is something that's tough to hear, but they rise above it. A lot of them, otherwise they complain about it to the HOD. But either way, I hope more than 50% of them actually rise above it. So when I look at achievement of graduate attributes, those are the ones I looked at. Those are some of the findings. So you'll see out of all of them except for 2, they were all achieved. And for the ones that weren't achieved, I did do my job, and I included that into the group assignment instead. So now I'm going to be handing over. Okay, so some of the challenges of the implementation, it took me large amounts of time, honestly. And then a lot of my tutors quit, so I had to leave. Yes, I know they were honors students and they were busy first semester, so they focused on honors instead of tutoring, which left me with 2 tutors. So that was a bit of a challenge. And then also because 42.1% of students were mainly on campus, so that limited the amount of time they had to play the game when they were at home. So I'm going to hand over to my students because this, like I said, is biased. Because I'm not going to tell you I really suck at certain things. There's room for development. So for my students who have experienced my way of teaching, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves first and to provide you with an honest overview of how they've actually experienced my teaching and learning using the star.
Awesome, thank you very much. I think I wanted to share my views on, my name is Brian. I am a final year BCom student. I wanted to share my views on the implementation of that business simulation. I think to something that I haven't experienced before, and if you take a step back and you think about what is actually being asked of you, we weren't given any limitations where there's much money. In fact, we could just spend money the way we wanted to. But the final goal, there was always one goal, to make a high net profit in your final year. It was over 10 years or something. And I noticed that you see the graph drop later in the years. You ask yourself, why does this happen? How can I change my strategy? At the end of the day, the strategy that I ended up with was charging nothing for my platform, right? For the first 9 years. To get market share, like that is where the money is going to come from. Obviously, everybody will want my product because it's free, and I pumped all the money that I had into complementary products. And the more complementary products you have, the more people want to buy your platform. So that is what I stuck to, and I ended up on the $74-point-something billion at the end of year 10. Yes, my graph was flat in the beginning, but it shot all the way up. And that's the kind of thing that you just need to take a step back and just think about it. And just as a strategy, I think, well, obviously it doesn't make any business sense because I had 100-something billion negative net profit. But I mean, I made my 74 billion at the end of that. That was the goal. That was, and that's what I did. So. Yeah, I think that was my experience. Now I enjoy it. I mean, I play 3, 4, 5 times a day, just because just trying to tune my strategy just to that angle. And I think it was brilliant.
I must say it's quite daunting standing over here. I understand what lectures feel like in class with like 250 students. I see a couple of us sleeping as well. I understand that I usually sleep in all my lectures as well. So I'm that type of student who's going to fall asleep in the lectures and whatnot. That's just not my attention span is probably about maybe 8 seconds, just a bit longer than a goldfish. So you guys know. So basically, how I found eColloquium, or I'll be speaking about. My name is apologies, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Bradley, and I'll be speaking in particular about eColloquium and uploading documents in eColloquium and how that helped. For a student who is fairly lazy and who doesn't tend to focus in lectures, it helps in that it's the documents are there, the presentations are there, and the supporting material, for example, the PDFs that a person uploaded eColloquium. So the only problem that I found was that in order for you to understand the documents, you need to go to class, and that's why I had a 42%, maybe 25% of people say that they would actually they understand through attending the classes. So what I found that is most important was uploading documents. I found a couple of challenges. The first challenge was, of course, for those of us who don't necessarily have access to the internet or don't have access to any technology material or any technology, it's kind of a difficult thing to access the material. That's one of the major challenges that I found. But the benefits, of course, in using the system and understanding that campus is open, the library times are available at certain times that you can use it. The EMS has a couple of computers in the postgrad lab. I know we're not allowed to, but
you do what you need to do.
You do what you need to do in order to be successful, even if you step until you said 5 a.m. is too late. It's too early to be. You need to be up. You need to watch the sunrise. So what I'm trying to say is that it helps if you are willing to put the effort in. On the odd occasion there are a couple of downtimes when you come and that's where we do tend to struggle with students, but that's for us last minute students. So it doesn't really matter. But the major benefit is that the uploading documents does indeed work. It is a good idea. But of course the major challenge that does stand is the fact that not everybody has access to the internet. So how do we help students who don't have access to the internet get the documents that they require? Right. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. So first and foremost, I just want to say I'm not as amazing on the mic as Brian Petersen over here. So my name is Simeon Reuter. I'm also a third year BCom student. The two topics that I'll be speaking about is asynchronous engagement as well as synchronous engagement in relation to eColloquium. So I'll start with asynchronous communication. Asynchronous communication defined would be a scenario whereby 2 or more parties are communicating online and each party responds based on their own personal clock. So communication is not in real time. So the manner in which we, third year students now, utilized the asynchronous communication on eCanva was every single week we would have a question based on course material and based on the game that was asked. And naturally it would be, the count was on marks as well, so based on the response and how your response was. And every single week, so I would post something and then Bradley will respond maybe 2-3 days later kind of thing. And yeah, that's the manner in which we use asynchronous communication for the module. Obviously there's pros and cons to using it. Pros being it's very convenient, and of course because not a lot of students really like lectures, so we prefer just doing our own thing in our own time, and I think that was one of the main benefits. And because it also allowed us to structure our own learning time in a sense of not many students really like getting up at 8:30 to
on a Monday morning.
So if they can decide when they want to do their study work, it would be much better for them and it's more convenient. So in that regard, it was much more better, it was beneficial. And then actually the cons being the internet access being a problem because not all the students have access to internet at all. And self-discipline, because lectures, the structure you have every time you go to your class, but if you have a week to post something and you decide
3 minutes before the deadline,
I'm going to wait, you lack the self-discipline and then you end up forgetting to post anything. So that's the pros and cons of the asynchronous communication with regards to eCanva. And with the synchronous communication, as Fasten showed it earlier on, was the chat room. So I have a problem with, so synchronous communication defined would be that of two or more parties having a conversation in real time online, right? But with the chat room that eCanva has, I would say it's the best option that eCanva has in order to have synchronous communication, but it's still not where it needs to be in the sense of it's not synchronized really. So what would happen was I would post something at 11 o'clock and he might respond at 11:15, 11:20. The response is much quicker than the forum discussions that we were prepared every single week, but the problem was it still wasn't real time. So I think the issue was, well, a few of the issues would be that no one was notified that, of course you don't want thousands of notifications to be sent to you, but if I'm on eCanva and someone posts a question on the discussion forum, I wasn't notified, so I'm supposed to know. And I mean, I don't think any student's going to go every single day to go check what's happening in the discussion forum. Sorry, the chat room, my apologies. So
the discussion forum.
All the discussion forum. But so in that regard, it wasn't synchronized because we weren't getting notified. I didn't know when the messages were being posted. And yeah, so it is the best alternative. It is the best option we have getting to utilizing synchronized communication. But then we would need someone, a lecturer or a tutor, or someone to constantly be in front of the PC, and then which is highly improbable. And then on top of that, the other problem that I have with it was that the interface of eCanva is very, very easy to use, but it's not exactly user-friendly, especially with regards to how you want to respond. And there's just a whole lot of weird, it's just not very nice to use it. So I think that was the main challenges with synchronous communication. And yeah, that's about it.
So that's the real version of the teaching. I think our 15 minutes is up, but I think also what's important to note is that one, students like to do things in their own time. Two, that the reason why they post is because I have marks attached. And so if you want synchronous and asynchronous communication, then the motivation is the marks. And also that I gave the person who made the most money in the business simulation game 100%. And so the aim was actually to chase the most money, and it became really competitive. So some people weren't willing to discuss this strategy because someone else would pick it up and they might make more money. And I don't mind the competition, but it was interesting to note. But it was also an interesting learning experience for some of the other students in terms of how do they then source that information out of other people. And so it brought out lots of different characteristics and traits in terms of negotiation, bribery, etc., etc. But ultimately, I hope it was a rewarding experience for them, despite the large amounts of work. Thank you.